All right, so we listen to understand the other person's perspective because we don't want to make them defensive, and we could be wrong. We ask open-ended questions to flesh out what they believe and why they believe it. We observe nonverbal. So we want to understand people's emotional reaction to whatever they're talking about, so we can address that. If this is a topic that makes them angry or sad or excited or scared, that's something we want to pay attention to. It'll definitely help us hone in on where that pathos is when they believe something because of emotion. You have to be able to connect to people emotionally before you can connect to them intellectually, which means that you have to understand the emotions that drive their beliefs and their opinions. I used to be very judgmental and dismissive of anti vaxxers. I felt that they were being ignorant, and through their ignorance, they were not putting themselves at risk. They were putting their children at risk who were too immature to make this decision for themselves. And they were also putting other people's children who have compromised immune systems and aren't able to get vaccines for that reason. They're putting them at risk by exposing them to all these diseases. And one morning I was listening to NPR and they were interviewing this mother who had chosen not to vaccinate her children. And I just, for whatever reason that morning, it just clicked with me for the first time. And as they were interviewing this woman, you could hear the absolute terror in her voice, the fear that she was going to make a decision that would end up permanently injuring, altering, damaging her child, that she was going to be responsible for this permanent negative change in her child. And she was so terrified of that that she was willing to risk whooping cough or measles or whatever it was. And I had always been so judgmental and dismissive, and then hearing this woman and realizing that this decision was coming out of a place of, this is my child and I'm going to protect them, that I can understand, right? That is a very reasonable, understandable thing. And when you understand that that's the perspective that they're coming from, that they're trying to protect their child, and that they see this as a threat to their child's health, then their decision makes sense in light of that emotion. But you have to understand it from an emotional perspective before you can understand it from an intellectual one, because intellectually that decision does not make sense. All right, so we observe nonverbal so that we can connect to people emotionally, because we need to connect to them emotionally before we can connect to them intellectually. We have to understand emotionally what they're going through and what they're coming from if we want to understand what they believe and why they believe it. We also want to use minimal reinforcers. Minimal reinforcers are just, we're just showing them that we're paying attention, right? And to embrace silence. Embracing silence is especially important in persuasion, because oftentimes when we disagree with people, we're just letting them talk, but we're really just waiting. We're rehearsing our argument in our own mind and just waiting for them to pause so we can hop in and disagree with them. Don't do that. Like, if they pause, embrace the silence, give them an opportunity to kind of like sit in that silence, and that will show that you're not just waiting to pounce on them. You're actually considering what they're saying. And lastly, we want to use restatements. So restatements serve a very specific function in persuasion, and they're very, very useful tactic in persuasion. The first function they serve is to clarify the speaker's point. Restatements help to make sure that you're actually understanding the other person. I can't tell you how many arguments I've avoided since I started using restatements. So many arguments are due to miscommunication and not due to an actual difference in opinion or beliefs. People have just expressed themselves ambiguously, or you have misunderstood them. So many conflicts are created by miscommunication. So by using restatements, you're making sure that you understand the other person's perspective before you start trying to challenge them on it. And then, as always, restatements serve to let the speaker know that you're paying attention. So the first part of persuasion is really getting to a point where you can explain to the other person, okay, it sounds like you believe blank because of blank. That's really what the first step in being persuasive is, to listen to the other person, ask open-ended questions, and get to the point where you can say, this is what you believe and this is why you believe it. And then you can move on to the next part of persuasion. There's also a nefarious reason to use restatements when you're disagreeing with someone. Sometimes you will disagree with people and they are arguing with you in bad faith, and every time you kind of show them that they're wrong, they change their position, and it is an incredibly frustrating thing to do. When you use restatements, you lock people into a position. You say you believe this because of this, and then you're no longer chasing a moving target. You've locked them into that argument, and that's what you have to dispute.